So here we have Greenlight's 1970 Dodge Challenger. This one's an RT just like the other one, except it's a 6-pack rather than the Magnum we had before. Still, this car has the same features as the other one, having openable doors and trunk and hood, as well as steerable wheels. Rotate the steering wheel and we can steer the wheels in either direction. Not only that, this one also has a movable antenna. You can move it up, move it down. And when it comes to the hood, they actually have functional hood pins. We zoom in on that. This model does come with hood pins that you can remove and open up the hood. When we do, we see the 446-pack engine. This engine has a lot of great detail in it. It's painted in orange just like the other one. It's got actual rubberized wires. It doesn't really have all the wires that it should, but it does have a decent amount that really helps to display the engine properly. One of the things, if you zoom in on the engine, you'll notice when it comes to the air filter, is actually defined. It's not just a decal or paint or whatever just to make it look like an actual air filter. It's actually defined in such a way that makes it look very realistic. You can also see the headlights. These are much more defined and they're inlaid this time, or at least they're further inlaid. They make them look a lot more realistic to the real car. Now, if we go over and look to the sides, we've got similar logos to what we had before. Now we have this kind of stripe going down it, kind of almost like a rally stripe looking thing. We can open the door, and we can see really where the quality of this model comes from. The nice details we get. We get actual carpeting in the car. We've got seats that kind of move back and forth, but they're not meant to. It's just how they are. We got seat belts, and the seats are actually kind of rubberized. They're kind of like fabric. That's what I meant. They kind of move back and forth, but it makes them feel a lot more realistic and look more realistic. But the other thing is, you'll see there's a lot more paint involved. There's a lot better details and much more crispy details, such as the dash, the steering wheel, and the whole thing overall looks actually a lot nicer than the previous one. If we shut that and we move over to the rear of the car, we can see the tail light once again. This one's got a lot more definition than the other one. We can just have a look at it and we see the tail lights. Now, I will say that these tail lights are actually not as nice as the previous ones, but it's much more, good altogether looking at the car on the rear section. If we open up the trunk, which on the last one was kind of a major letdown, but if we open up the trunk on this one, we can see a spare tire, actually molded to look like the real tires on the vehicle that we have here. We got spare tools, and it's overall quite nice. I mean, it's a lot more realistic and makes for a much better display overall. Same, we move over back to the side, we see we got a much better fuel gap, and everything just about is a little bit nicer. Everything kind of in between of it. This is, of course, a more expensive vehicle, but I think really what you pay for is a lot better. If we flip this over, we get to see some more stuff. The actual bottom of the car is gray, which I think is kind of an interesting way of going about it. If we have a look, kind of a bit difficult to lay this vehicle on its side. Let me zoom out for you. Exhaust system, I mean, it's painted. The transmission's painted in silver this time. Engine and all that. The suspension is actually, it does have suspension. It's kind of like faux suspension, I will say. Front suspension is actually decent. The rear is kind of just very sloppy, I think. It doesn't really feel right. But anyways, that's still overall, it's actually quite a nice underbody. But as for the suspension, the rear does move a little bit. The front moves quite substantially, and it moves very nicely. Now, overall, this car is actually pretty decent. It's got a little bit of quality issues. I've noticed the doors are very flimsy, the hood's a little flimsy, the trunk's very tight, surprisingly. There's actually some exposed super glue where the convertible, I assume, has just been glued on, this convertible top fold down piece. You might be able to see it there. Try to adjust the camera where you can probably get a bird's eye view of this vehicle. And I also noticed with the luggage rack kind of being all bent up, but it's fine because, I mean, it's a luggage rack. In real life, those would get quite bent up over time. Overall, I do like this car quite a bit. It's a good collection, or it's a good addition to my collection, being that of a 1/18 scale.